our viewer, wherever you are watching us from. This is Ndizi TV Africa, and this is the Morning Buzz with Jeff Nyakundi. Today being the 2nd of February 2026. It has been a while, and here we are moving on swiftly to ensure that we are bringing you what is trending and what is happening, what happened all over the weekend, including the sports sector and what has been going on in the country. As we start our morning show this morning, we are going to have a look at the newspapers review this morning, thereafter the trending stories, and of course your comment via our SMS number, that is 21575, and of course through our that is the social media platforms in Ndizi TV Africa, on Facebook and Ndizi TV Africa, and of course on YouTube and Ndizi TV Africa. Don't go too far, because we are kickstarting this morning from the newspaper review, and of course we are going to have a look at what has been happening and what has been published on the news, the local daily news, and what happened yesterday and Saturday, where the political figures, of course the united opposition and of course the broad-based government have been having their say. More so, the united opposition were in a church in Muranga County, and we're going to have a look at it and what they said in a few. But before we get into that, let's first of all start from the newspaper this morning as we kickstart our day. I don't know where you are watching us from, and you can be able to talk to us via SMS number 21575, and of course our social media platforms in Ndizi TV Africa all over, on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and X at Ndizi TV Africa. Now, as we started this morning, let's have a look at the first newspaper here, that is the Standard newspaper. They're mentioning about the grand cover-up, and of course here they're talking about impunity. The police forces are playing PR games, refusing to name officers caught on CCTV and hiding behind unnamed administrators as brutality keeps repeating. That is from Nandi Hills, Paul Hall beating to church raids. The pattern is familiar. Now Senator Samson Chirarigei accuses the Inspector General that is Douglas Kanja of shielding rogue officers and dismisses disciplinary moves as a stunt. Kevin Maseri's killing in Kitengela drives the point home. Shot outside a pub, he died as his friends fight for life. With IPOA propping and promises piling up, Kenyans are left asking who will finally be held to account. That is a story published on page 4, and of course we can be able to see the picture or the photo of the IG, that is Douglas Kanja, and of course some of the scenes where these things have been happening, and the one from Nandi where the young people, young boys or young men were playing a bull at night, and then the police officers came in forcing them or beating them. That was seen on a CCTV camera, and that's a story published on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. If we can scroll a little bit up, we can be able to have a look on what they had mentioned, or what they said. That is Inspector General Douglas Kanja mentioning about cases of indiscriminate shooting are so common, meaning police brutality will continue until someone is held to account, serving as a deterrence to police missteps. That is the super co-chair, that is the Kenya National Civil of Society Center Executive Director, who mentioned that they will have to, of course these cases have been happening, and the thing to be done here is that one officer should be serving as an example to others. And elsewhere there, we can be able to see that among those facing disciplinary are that is some of those that who were mentioned. That is the Dinderet Sub-County Police Commander, Nandi Hills Office, that is officer commanding a substation, the OCS, and of course the that is the Songoch OCS officer in charge of the rabbit deployment, and of course the Songoch camp office, that is officer officer in charge of the GSU Songoch camp, and of course officer in charge of the anti-stock theft unit in the area, and those have been who were mentioned to be facing disciplinary actions, and those who were seen to be beating the young boys in that, or young men in that scenario, were not mentioned, or even they were not mentioned even their names. So iliibua hisia kwamba ni kipi kile ambacho kitakuwa kinaendelea ikiwa kwamba maafisa wa polisi wanaendelea kufanya mabaya ama hofu hapa na pale, kutumia nguvu kupita kiasi, na ili hali hakuna chochote ambacho huwa wanakifanya. Tukisidi kusonga mbele, tupate kuangazia gazeti la The Daily Nation. Let's just have a look at the Daily Nation newspaper this morning that's talking about the state terror. Latest incidences adds to over 20 unsolved cases. Similar on what we have just had a look at that is the Standard newspaper, and of course the Daily newspaper also reports about impunity. So the violence we have been seeing on churches, and that one of involving the former deputy president Rigathi Gachagua. Here talking about the grand cover-up and impunity a week after the violent attack on former deputy president Rigathi Gachagua at a church in Othaya. There are still no arrests, and the government has signaled it has no intention of going after the planners of the violence by shifting the investigation from the DCI to IPOA. Officials have narrowed the organized crime to a police misconduct probe, which means the politicians and goons blamed for the chaos have been let off the hook. That is a story published on page 4, of course page 5, and of course page 6 of the Daily newspaper. And from the pictures we're going to be able to see is the DCP party chief Rigathi Gachagua addressing the rally that was attended by some of the United Opposition counterparts. That is yesterday at Gitugi Market in Murang'a County. That is after the successful attending the church service. Thereafter, they were having chats with the people from Gitugi Market in Murang'a County. Elsewhere, and that's a story I mentioned that you can be able to find it or read it through page 4, 5, and 6. And elsewhere, as a president warns against politics in church, of course, President William Ruto breaks his silence on violence during church service, warning politicians against retrogressive politics, and of course chaos in place of worship. That is a story published on page 7. And from the photo we are seeing there, the president and of course other political figures were attending a church service yesterday in Nairobi, and of course we mentioned about the attacks and of course the politics that have been happening in churches. That is having a mention of what happened in Othaya the other week, and there is President William Ruto with the Kamkunji Member of Parliament Yusuf Hassan and Bishop Alfred Nyaoro during a Sunday service at PEFA All Nations Gospel Church in Gikomba, Nairobi County yesterday. Having a look at page 10, talking about issues about education, is that a decline of public schools puts future of learners that is at stake. Over the past 3 decades, there have been a significant shift from public to private schools as more parents lose confidence in state-run institutions. That's showing that most of the parents are losing it to trust the public schools, more so to be either primary or secondary, and rather having a shift to the private stake, that is the private institutions, because they seems to be hovering better than what the government schools they are offering out, and that is a story published on page 10. Elsewhere on page 12, we can be able to have a look at it on talking about the scandal, that is the deal, trips, and of course girls Kenya link to new Jeffrey Epstein files. That is in August, 2019, a man died in an American prison, but this was not any man, it was talking about Jeffrey Edward Epstein, a financier who made a name and a fortune from managing the wealthy of various rich individuals. That is a story published on page 12 of the Daily Nation. You can have a look at it when you grab this newspaper. Elsewhere, talking about on page 3, having a look at page 2 and 3, how Ruto used Uhuru's script on KU land saga. Professor Paul Wanaina had served or had survived long enough to usher in the new administration of President William Ruto that promptly reinstated him. But as he soon discovered, the more the more things change, the more they remain the same. That is a story published on page 2 and of course page 3 of that is the Daily Nation, talking about the Kenyatta University, that is Vice Chancellor, the Professor Paul Wainaina, on what is termed to be like a script that was done or that was used by the former president, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, and later was used after he was reinstated with the new administration to remain in office, but later on he has been thrown out. That's a story published on page 2 and of course page 3 of the Daily Nation. Some of the stories published on this Daily Nation, you can have a look at it. And of course, being February 2nd, that is 2026. Let's have a look at that is the People's Daily. On what we are seeing there is that there is a picture of two opposition leaders talking about on Voice, and here they're saying that inside opposition's push for Matiang'i to park Kalonzo. They're saying that there are talks that are ongoing that Matiang'i should be parking Kalonzo or supporting Kalonzo for the bid of 2027 general elections. And of course, the opposition or the united opposition has not come out clearly to say who is going to be the front runner. But what we are seeing right now is that each and every person or each and every candidate, that is including Fred Matiang'i, Kalonzo Musyoka, and of course Rigathi Gachagua, Eugene Wamalwa, Martha Karua, all those, each and every individual or each and every candidate or each and everyone is saying that he is a candidate for the general elections, that is 2027. And of course kila mtu anatafuta that is kuungwa mkono kutoka maeneo yake pale na kuhakikisha kwamba wanachukua uongozi mwaka 2027. Lakini kwa sasa hivi wanasema kwamba pale what the talks are ongoing that Matiang'i to park Kalonzo Musyoka, either Kalonzo Musyoka to be the presidential candidate and of course maybe Matiang'i to be the vice. We don't know. Let's just wait and see what will be going on this other area. And of course on page 6 they're talking about the Ruto administration fingered over Mavoko demolition. Talking about the Mavoko demolition that happens around 2 years, around 2 to 3 years ago, and now they're being mentioned that the current administration is being singled out to be the one which is or which did that. That is a story published on page 6. Elsewhere, on page 8, why CRA is at odds with the Treasury of 458 billion shillings for counties. That is talking about the CRA is having a close look over issues with the 458 billion shillings for counties, and that's a story that was published at page 8 of that is the People's Daily. And of course, those are some of the stories published on the People's Daily. When you grab this newspaper, you can be able to have a look at it. They say that news that moves with you, that is our People's Daily. Elsewhere, let's have a look at the Star newspaper. And of course, the Star newspaper here is talking about the 85% or what they are terming as the experts now blame high demand for housing and the poor workmanship. So in Nairobi, and of course they are mentioning that 85% of Nairobi, that is talking about 85% of Nairobi houses in danger of collapsing. That is as per the report that has been tabled by the agencies. That is a story on page 4 and of course page 5 of that is of the Star newspaper. And lives of city residents in that is in danger among blame game. And of course here the question is, who had given authority some of the buildings to be, or some of the constructions to be done without proper that is fiscal checks, and of course to ensure that the places they're going to build these houses ni mahali ambapo pameruhusiwa. But now at least 85% of the Nairobi houses in danger of collapsing. And recently we have seen issues and of course some houses that is collapsing in Nairobi, and of course killing and injuring some people living in it. And the quick question is that, is the government taking what's supposed, or doing what's supposed to be done to ensure that such a kind of issues are not raising up? And that is a picture for people to have a look at how some of the houses that collapsed, and they're talking about it was a 5-story building that collapsed that killed 2 people in Ruaraka, Kiambu County. That is in November 2022. That is a footage, or that's a photo from Ruaraka. That is from 2022 November. And 2 people died when that building came down. And the question is, this is the poor workmanship and of course the engineers who are behind such a kind of a mess in the country, and more so in the capital of that is the capital of the country, that is Nairobi County. Elsewhere, let's have a look at on top of this newspaper. That is on page 6 of the newspaper, talking about Martin Agumbi. Why they are saying that why road maintenance levy is a game changer for Kenya. That is a development talking about the road levy maintenance is a game changer for Kenya, talking about the development issues. And of course that is a story published on page 6, and we can be able to have a look at it, and of course get more information on why is Martin Agumbi referring to the road maintenance is a big game changer to the country. That's a story published on page 6. And of course on page 2, that is talking about the Naroko family mourned firstborn son after KDF training death. Of course, they were, that is the news spread fast. That is a day after yesterday that there was a tragedy during the training. That is one of the morning trainings where this man collapsed and died instantly. Talking about the guy from Narok mourns the family from Narok mourns their firstborn son after the KDF training death. And that is a story of a tragedy published on page 2 of the Star newspaper. Having a look at, or moving on to angazie gazeti la Taifa Leo. And of course tunapoangalia hapa Taifa Leo, ni kipi kile ambacho kimeangaziwa, wengi wakitaja kwamba masuala ya vyama na uongozi wake. Pale ni kusema kwamba naibu kiongozi wa chama adai maamuzi hayafanywi tena na Oburu, bali kutoka nje bila kufuata sheria za ODM. Anasema kwamba ODM inaendeshwa na Ikulu. Ososi ndiye amezungumza pale, ikiwa kwamba huyu ni seneta wa kaunti ya Vihiga. Asema kwamba seneta wa Vihiga dai sababu ya viongozi waasi wa ODM kupinga baadhi ya maamuzi ni kuwa yanafanywa na watu wasio wanachama, na asema ndiyo maana akamwambia Ruto ama Rais Ruto atumie asasi na ngazi za uongozi wa ODM kuwasiliana na wanachama. Kio kwamba ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 2 wa gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Na pale tunamuona ama picha ya Godfrey Ususi ambaye ni seneta wa kaunti ya Vihiga. akizungumza akisema kwamba kile ambacho kinaendelezwa ama chama cha ODM kinaendeshwa kutoka Ikulu. Na ni hivyo basi tunaona masuala, na kumbuka kwamba ODM kimekuwa na visa vya kutoaminiana uongozini pale. Viongozi wote hawaaminiani, hawazungumzi kwa lugha moja. Hawa wengine wanasema hawamuungi ama hawaungi broad based government, serikali jumuishi, na wengine wanasema kwamba wanaiunga mkono, ikiwa kwamba ni makundi mawili ambayo yanakinzana, yafuta ni kufute hapa na pale. Na ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili katika gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Kwingine ni kwamba polisi waondolewa uchunguzi wa Gachagua. Taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili wanasema kwamba viongozi wa upinzani Kalonzo Musyoka upande wa kulia na Fred Matiang'i wakiandamana na Rigathi Gachagua walihutubia wananchi sokoni Gitugi, Murang'a County hiyo jana kabla ya kuelekea Udhaya, Nyeri. Kesi ya kuvamiwa kwa Gachagua sasa kuchunguzwa na IPOA. Ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Kwingineko ukurasa wa 3 katika vidokezo zaidi ni kwamba wanasiasa 9,000 Ikulu kusaka tiketi ya UDA. Kabla ya kikao Jumatano wiki hii, waniaji wapewa hadi Februari 4 kujisajili. Ikiwa kwamba ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 3 pale. Na kujisajili kwa wale wote ambao wanawania kiti cha ubunge wanajisajili na shilingi 5,000, akiwemo wanasiasa na aliyekuwa waziri katika serikali ya William Samoei Ruto, Moses Kuria, naye anatajwa kwamba amejiandikisha kama ambaye anataka tiketi ya chama cha UDA kuwania ubunge. Ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 3. Na kwingineko ukurasa wa 3 huo ni kwamba vitabu vya grade ya 10 havijafika shuleni. Vitabu vya grade ya 10 havijafika shuleni havijafika shule zote. Ni baadhi tu ya wanafunzi hawasomi wakisubiri vitabu viwasili shuleni. Na maswali yanaibuka pale ikiwa kwamba serikali ilikuwa imetaja kwamba imejipanga vizuri, na bado ikiwa kwamba ni wiki kama ya 3 hivi na vitabu bado havijafika shuleni. Ni lile ambalo linaashiria kwamba hata kama watoto hawa wameshafika shuleni, bado masomo hayajang'oa nanga vile ambavyo inafaa kuwa. Ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 3. Upande wa juu tuweze kuangazia taarifa zile ambazo zimechapishwa upande wa juu katika gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Ni kwamba madaktari wa Nairobi kurudi kazini baada ya siku 45 za mgomo. Chama cha KMPDU chasema hatua hiyo ni kutoa fursa kwa mazungumzo zaidi. Ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 4 katika gazeti hili la Taifa Leo, ikiwa kwamba siku 45 tangia yale ama kususia kuingia kazini ama mgomo wa madaktari katika kaunti ya Nairobi. Basi baadhi ya maafisa wao ama chama kile cha KMPDU basi kimewaita wale madaktari waweze kurejea kazini, ikiwa wakitoa muda zaidi wa mazungumzo kuendelea kufanyika. Na kwingineko katika taarifa za spoti ukurasa wa 20 pale wanataja kwamba mashetani wekundu wamefufuka. Baada ya kulemea Manchester City na Arsenal, Manchester United wafyeka Fulham na kurukia 4 bora APL, ikiwa kwamba sasa hivi ni nambari 4 bora za APL, ikiwa kwamba bado Arsenal inaongoza na kifuatwa pale na Manchester City. Basi na hii Manchester United inafuata ikiwa yaane pale. Nitakuwa nikikupa yale ambayo yaliendelea haswa katika weekendi hii tangia siku ya Jumamosi. Ni kipi kile ambacho kimefanyika, baadhi ya michezo ama baadhi ya timu zile ambazo zilicheza. Awali nilikuwa nimetaja kwamba Arsenal inatangulia pale na pointi 53, Manchester City inafuata na pointi 47, na bila shaka Aston Villa nayo ni ya 3 na pointi 46. Manchester United ni nambari 4 na pointi 41. bado tunavyoangalia hapa na pale kuna kinyang'anyiro kikali kufuatia ni nani ambaye atakuwa mshindi wa EPL season hii, huku wengi tukipigia Arsenal upato pale. Tunapozidi kusonga mbele, tuangazie gazeti hili la mwisho kabisa, gazeti la The Business Daily. Na gazeti hili la The Business Daily pale anasema kwamba taarifa kuu ni kwamba taxpayers face 23 billion bill over Coco Networks death. That is talking about the clean cooking startup as filed for administration, and of course Kenya to pay compensation under the World Bank Pact. That is talking about tulikuwa tunaona kwamba kulikuwa na